Now, this is the final part of the whole thing, which is, presentation. So I asked all moderators to synthesize all the, conversations into three insights for the next 3 months, 90 days, and by the end of 2025. So I'm going to ask the first moderator. Give it up to Sami. Sami, you have 5 minutes to present top 3 insights for the next 90 days and top 3 insights by the end of 2025 in the context of financial support. The floor is yours.
All right, well, we had a super productive session. So grateful for the insights that everybody shared, specific with regard to finance, and really they touch other areas as well. I think, like others, we ran into this question of sanctions, of course, with regards to moving money. And one of the topics that came up, the first one that I'll touch on here, and we're starting with 90 days, is that it would be valuable to many people to better understand sort of the guidelines that are in place from GL22. And sort of what can be done to invest in areas of Syria that are not subject to sanctions in the north and otherwise. And so the first initiative or sort of idea that our group is suggesting is to do an information share, a mini conference of sorts to educate people on what can be done within those guidelines. We think that that's something that can be accomplished in the near term. Secondly, we see a lot of value around financial education. And so this is kind of related to the idea of, okay, if there are certain things we cannot do in Syria right now, how can we position ourselves? How can we work as a country to be best positioned when the regulatory environment does open up more? And so this would involve things around educating companies, institutions around financial modeling, creating pitch decks, really preparing companies and organizations that when outside funding, can come in, that they are ready and they're able to have those conversations effectively and efficiently. And then, thirdly, we thought there'd be a lot of value in working to map funds that, either can currently or have a desire in the future to invest in the region. These could be social impact funds. These could be more broadly funds that have a large focus kind of in the MENA region. But creating a sort of a map, a list, a database, and then commencing dialogue with these different funds to understand what their parameters are, what their barriers are, and what it would look like for them to be able to engage more actively in the region. So that's our third initiative that we believe can be started and progressed within the next 90 days. Moving to post 90 days, this is where it gets a little bit more broad. We wanted to try to keep it within 2025, I think was the goal, but I think some of these initiatives may extend beyond 2025 as well. The idea of microfinance, continued to come up. What would it look like to partner with regional banks in some way? And there's a lot more work that needs to be done in order to understand that sort of the implications and what that would look like. But are there ways to work with small businesses from an investment, from a loan perspective? Was a sort of constant topic of conversation within our group. exploring further ways to stimulate the economy and create jobs in a freelance sort of environment was another one. Are there ways that we can circumvent some of the regulations that are in place through a more freelance approach that would scale over time? And then thirdly, there's this general feeling that there isn't enough sort of an information share ecosystem. And there are a number of incubators that currently exist in Syria, certainly, but creating and putting more resources around investing in incubators and providing resources to companies that are trying to scale in the region. And there are many ways that could go. This could involve crowdfunding. This could involve pooling different types of resources that are related to education, and so on and so forth. And so that was kind of where we started, and there's certainly a long way to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Let's talk about what we worked on in the next 2 hours. هلا أول شغلة before we start this, I want you guys to give a round of applause for yourself. 80% of my group didn't know each other. In 15 minutes, we break up to like 6 groups. They wrote a freaking policy, like 6 pages. I think this is the story of SYNC, and this is what gives me hope that we were able, when I joined SYNC, I only knew Basil, I saw him once, Iyad, I saw him twice, and Abir, I saw her maybe once. That's how much like we were able to do all of this in like 3 weeks. Same thing happened here. To go back into this point, what gives me hope is the amount of energy and how we can work together, given that most of us are كل واحد in different position, different seniority level. You guys were able to come together and work on this. So thank you so much for all of you to participate. Very quickly, our group split into like 6 categories. We talked shop as entrepreneurs, how we can like upscale the entrepreneurship scene in Syria. From policy, the short-term 90 days to lean more on the open source licensing, meaning that, hey, we're not going to wait for sanction, and if sanction came in, the relief of sanction if it comes in for a year or 6 months, and then they re-put sanction, then we build a lot of infrastructure, and we paid a lot for licensing, that's going to be taken away. So the suggestion from my group was to go in and rely more on open source solutions that we can upscale and train the people in Syria to work on this. And then the next suggestion point is to work on a fiscal year policy for startups, to promote startups, meaning that we need to give a list of suggestions to the government, telling them, hey, those are the regulations that we need to change to promote startup scene in Syria, making it easier for IP and make it easier for companies to register and be legal, like to go into the legal system. And then the second group was talking about partnerships. They talked about a platform to facilitate the connection between Silicon Valley and Syria. This digital platform, what I want to tell you that there's a lot of stuff that exists that does this. One of them is Mentory. Iyad can talk more about it, where they connect mentors and people from Syria to get mentorship. So check out Mentory, and Iyad will talk more about it. From an infrastructure, one really great suggestion happened that, hey, like we need free zones, digital cities, meaning that we need like small places from the government where they put more infrastructure in it. They put electricity, internet, and they allow companies to operate within those zones in different cities around Syria. So that's the 90 days. And then for like the year plan, data centers. From digitalization, we talked about like a full year plan across 5 sectors and how those sectors will interact with each other, from health, education, economy, transportation, and other resources. Upscaling, because to have a successful entrepreneurship ecosystem, we need upscaling. So we talked about the idea of having boot camps in Syria. And as SYNC, I think we're exploring those options to go in and have like technical boot camps in the region to upscale people in the areas that we talked about today in the conference. And then from the finance perspective, we talked about the 90 days plan to build a framework to connect founders with investors. And that could be either in the form of like a website, a platform, or an app. I think there's already something in the work. And I would suggest you guys talk to Rama Shakaki from Transform VC. They were working with a group of investors when they were in Syria, and they were working on something similar. So if you have any ideas along those lines, work together. And with that, I'm going to turn it to the next group. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. All right, so the next breakout speaker, moderator is going to be Safouh Takruri, and they're going to talk about education and upskilling. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, thank you. So we're going to try to keep it to the time, similar to Abid. We talked about education, and we broke it into basically categories. We talked first about early childhood education. We talked about secondary education, what we call I'dadi and Sanawi. We talked about higher education, undergraduate and graduate. And then we talked also about upskilling and capacity building for teachers. So I will let each group to present their ideas in a minute.
Hi all, so my name is Ubay. So for early childhood, I think for a lot of us there is a lot of overlap. We're still talking about education. So for early childhood, some of the first things we need to start with is there are a lot of schools destroyed. There isn't enough venues for schools. So one part obviously is trying to rehabilitate the schools that are easy enough to rehabilitate, but also trying to leverage venues that are not schools for education, whether that's mosques or event venues or any space really around that. And also trying to invite volunteers from all over the country and the world, because there is a teacher shortage. And to encourage teachers is also to raise salaries, but probably that's unlikely. And this is on the very short term, because that does not get impacted by any of the sanctions. On the midterm is where we're hoping some of the sanctions will be lifted. So here we're talking about trying to leverage digital education to some degree, like Google Classroom or any other tools. Also for NGOs to be more involved in the education by sponsoring schools and other programs. Also try to get the diaspora back into the country, which can only happen once we have schooling for their kids. So that's having international schools reopening, because we had some, so it's just reopening them that teach either like SATs, B-level, etc. And then on the long term, we're talking about curriculum refresh. Actually, before that, something that's really needed, especially outside of the urban centers because of the economical situation, is introducing a meal program for school kids that will allow teachers to, families to send their kids back to school. And then, yeah, curriculum refresh, opening more international schools, and yeah, that's for early school years.
Thank you, thank you.
Wow.
Hey everybody, my name is Zakwan. So a lot of overlap. We focused on secondary education. In terms of short, medium, and long term, we talked about, in the short term, definitely the infrastructure is definitely key. So making sure that schools are operational and kids have a place to go, or students have a place to go. The second thing in the short term, we talked about doing a skill gap analysis, specifically for teachers and students alike, because that's going to feed into the medium term that we talked about, which is curriculum development, vocational training. If we have a good sense on what the skill gap is, then we could develop curriculum to close that gap. So that's the medium term. Obviously, some people want to go into university, higher education. So that would be pursuing a path in education. Alternatively, there are some folks who might want to go the vocational route. So vocational training, and somebody talked about online trainings and things like that. So that would be a medium term. In the long term, we talked about establishing a relationship with the local economy, making sure that we have a pipeline from high school into whether it's companies creating internships or universities for establishing opportunities for higher education. Keeping it short and sweet, so I'll stop there and I'll pass it to the next presenter.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Adam Helway, and so we were dealing with higher education in our group, and we had 3 or 4 core areas. One was on expanding vocational training due to the state of a lot of things, trying to accelerate getting the vocational training, getting accreditations, trying to get people trained. So in the short term, assessing funding needs and potential partnerships within the country. And then identifying and collaborating with any schools to sort of establish training programs that are not currently there. Working towards, so by the end of the year, working towards better government accreditation and scaling efforts to educate as many as 10,000 individuals, trying to put a big, hairy, audacious goal into the mix there. And then one of the other elements we were talking about was Syrian expertise, like leveraging Syrian expertise to strengthen higher education through mentorship and collaboration. So that's expertise in the country as well as obviously abroad. In the immediate term, being able to reach out to academic institutions to explore mentorship programs and create some tools for matching and identifying folks, so it's easier using some online tools and digital tools to do so. And then in the long term, expanding mentorship programs, including hands-on learning initiatives like summer schools, research projects, giving people real-world things to be able to work on. And then lastly, we have we think, I'm sure everybody else is feeling very similar to this, and the rest of our group, is digital education is very important. So in the short term, being able to look at a needs assessment or analysis of what is already there. Folks had mentioned the Syrian virtual university that's there, but try to take a look and see what's there and what's needed. Establish initial collaborations and define a phase 1 for a path forward. And then by the end of the year, launching a structured mentorship program and have a clearer path of exactly what that looks like, what needs to be backfilled and missing, have that fully established and ready to go. Thank you.
You have 30 seconds.
Sure, you got it. Salam everyone, my name is Asmat. So I'm gonna be talking about the capacity building. What we did is basically very similar to everyone here of what they presented. We basically presented for the 90 days analyzing the situation and resources, mentorship building, or a bridging between different stakeholders, partnership development with global stakeholders and local stakeholders, set up feedback system, and for the end of 2025, we talked about lift sanctions. Basically, everyone's a lot of similarity with everyone. The second point we said about establishing capacity building system. We set a goal for 1,000 teachers, allocate more fund for capacity building, and thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Where is Yahya?
Thank you, Safouh, thank you. All right, the next one is gonna be about hiring and job opportunities by Yahya Nashif. Yahya, let's keep it 90 days by 2025. Go for it.
يعني على السريع هيك بعد ما الشباب قعدوا صار لهم ساعة عم يحكوا ماشي. أول شيء رح يكون لا خلينا مع الأستاذ هاني نطلع نبلش مع هاني وأنا بخلص بختمها.
30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. My table did the problem of cultural readiness. How can we actually lift up the culture in Syria regarding whether it's teamwork or showing a pride of ownership in Syria and all these other problems in culture. So the quick thing in 90 days, to keep it short, first we need to identify exactly what's the problem over there. Go there, talk with employers, talk with engineers over there in the area to understand what gaps they have. After that, you would actually be doing some interviewing to pick these people, the top talent, and then train them. You would train them like whether you actually give them fake projects or have some team activity with them to train them how to become better team players, give them education on how to actually do interviews and all that, just to lift up the cultural experience. Part of the pipeline is also, after all this, is to make them ready to the job market out there. So you connect them to employers, whether it's locally or internationally with remote jobs. Another thing we can do is build tech incubators in Syria, where people can find a place to work and be able to actually make sure these people actually show up to work and connect them to real infrastructure, whether it's actually internet and so on. Long term is how we can scale this. We find out that one of the areas is two things. One is we can have the trainees become the trainers, so lift up the whole culture in the country where they can talk with their coworkers and all that. That's number one. Number two is our students. We have 60 universities in Syria. They can do wonders for their students by having, for example, job fairs or career coordinators in the universities that help students be prepared on what's out there. So this is actually the long term how we scale. Now I give it up to Yahya.
Thank you, Hani. So we had two tables only. Our table was working on bridging or connecting employers with employees in Syria, basically understanding how can we do that. So what we identified is the problem, and then over the next 90 days, it's going to be kind of like the possible solutions that we can build or we're able to work on as a group collectively. A lot of it is around building a process of how we're able to collect the information, who is the employers that are willing to employ in Syria, who are the employees that want to be employed in Syria, what's their skill levels, assess, vet, build that pipeline of information, that pipeline of data, and work on it further. For the long term, there is multiple solutions that we're still working on, but the focus area is either a job fair or some sort of a platform, or actually two different things. One is a job fair. Two is a platform that's able to connect, such as Fiverr or Upwork or any of those that exist in other places. Something similar, that way employers can post a job, and then there's also employees on there that have skills. They can look for employees or look for folks to get the job done, either as freelance or as employees or however that mechanism is. Overall, that's the picture, and we actually started the initiative of we're gonna actually, our table and the next table too, we're gonna put them in a WhatsApp group, and we're gonna start actually meeting on a weekly basis to work on solving this focus area that we kind of took on. With that, I leave it to, I think, Iyad. Have you guys met Iyad yet?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Give it up to Yahya. Thank you. All right, so the last breakout. This is my breakout. I'm the moderator. مع السلامة. All right, so we're going to invite the group, if you come to the stage, and we're going to talk about storytelling. Now, we chose this one specifically, and this is not tech per se, but we wanted to succeed on the ground and succeed also in the eyes of people. Perception matters, and yeah, go ahead. So perception matters, and we want to tell the story of our country, our story, the way we think it amplifies our voice. So we divided the storytelling into 4 categories. We said internal storytelling, like the story of Syrians in Syria. We talked about the science of storytelling. We also talked about the who is going to tell the story and to whom, okay? And the last one is about rebranding, how we rebrand our country. What are the top 5 things you want Syria to be known for, all right? Or something like that in the next 90 days and by the end of 2025, all right? So let's start with Mr. Ramel.
Hi, this is Ramel Qabbani, and I'm not in tech, I'm a brand consultant. So what we want to do is really transform brand Syria. You know, what is Syria known for? What is Syria all about? And the way we would do that is, first of all, by doing a comparative benchmarking of different countries that went through the same problem, like, you know, for instance, Japan or Germany, where, you know, the country was destroyed both mentally and physically, and then how, you know, they managed to basically, you know, go out of the rubbles and make an amazing success story. So understanding that would give us, you know, we would learn some, you know, some insights into that and see, you know, what they did and how we can benefit from that. And then after we do that, we would do a research both inside the country and outside the country, just to understand and to uncover what is Syria all about. Like, you know, what are the elements or the DNA that basically make Syria Syria? Is it like, you know, like, what is Syria in your mind? Is it food? Is it like history? Is it resilience? Is it, you know, survival? So on and so forth, and have that on the wall. And then based on that, we would then create the essence, the brand essence of Syria. What is the story of Syria? So that will be the end of the 90 days. Then at the end of 2025, based on that brand essence and story of Syria, we are going to have a plan, a rollout plan, both internally inside the country, how to rally everyone within Syria around that idea and make them live that brand and, you know, give them hope into, like, you know, we want to achieve that and change the perception. And also another plan that does the same thing outside of Syria. And it will be a very detailed brand rollout plan that is going to have different channels and, you know, different tactics and you know, different messaging and so many things. And it takes a year to just, you know, plan it and have it in place. Thank you. Oh.
Sana.
Hi, I'm Sana Sikkeria at Microsoft. Our group was discussing the who and whom. So who are we going to activate to do the storytelling, and who are we trying to reach? The 4 categories of who we discussed were governments, the government, influencers, traditional media, and then the private sector, so PR firms, search engine optimization firms, and social media marketing firms. My background is researching Russian, Iranian, Chinese, between you and me, sometimes the UAE and Israel, influence operations. So we sort of struck the government from the first sector, first for sanction reasons, second is to like not set a precedent of the government having a direct role in media messaging. So 90 days is identifying PR firms inside and outside the country, identifying influencers, so things like podcasters, and identifying the sort of media partners, and then identifying 50 big whoms. So these would be tech investors, celebrities, journalists. Can we get Mustafa Suleyman at Microsoft to pay attention to this? Can we get the Edward Damons of the world to pay attention to whatever message is being reached out to, and have plans for these 50 specific people? And then third for the 90 days is a sort of sanction guidebook for foreigners. So when foreign journalists come in, what can you not do, and have that ready for them? By the end of the year, others on my team have sort of discussed having big newsworthy events, but have sort of 3 events that you can coalesce a media message around, and organize those things, and then also have specific plans for those PR firms, those influencers, and have specific metrics in terms of viewership, clicks, et cetera, to have them reach that message that others have curated.
My name is Yasser. I am representing the incredible group who was focused on the scientific approach to pull requests. Sorry, public relations.
Let's keep it 90 seconds each so we can finish in 5 seconds.
No pressure. In 90 days, we want to do two things. We want to build a PR manual that is objective-based. So one objective could be to increase investments in Syria or increase the number of visitors. And number two, we wanted to add events and activities. So think, what if Mr. Beast would go into Syria and produce a video? That would be huge PR for the entire country. Over the long term, we want to execute on the manual that gets put together, iterate, 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 tell people about it, improve SEO. If you search Aleppo today, you will see soap. What if we could do this across everything that's related to Syria, so you don't see only destruction? And lastly, we want to connect and bring reverse brain drain. We want to bring people back into Syria. Sorry. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kima.
My name is Lana.
We talked about internal storytelling, and it was really important for our group to put the voices of people who currently live in Syria, who have lived through the war, first, instead of taking our perspective and imposing it in some ways onto the way we think their story should be told. So in 90 days, we talked about two steps. So the first is to search, where we want to search for stories to tell, groups to highlight, for example, stories of prisoners, forcibly disappeared people, stories of resistance and solidarity, and who is the average Syrian? What do they look like? What are their interests? Who are they really?
Once we find those people, we do want to document their stories, their personal stories, as well as stories of community-specific events that have happened. We'll do this by doing one-on-one interviews, collecting existing media, or even surveys. And then moving on to by the end of 2025, we thought that it's very important to allow a safe space for the Syrian people to heal from what they have gone through. We can do this by facilitating safe spaces like support groups. And this way, people that share similar stories and similar experiences can sit with one another and feel validated for what they have gone through. And then once they have healed, we can also facilitate workshops for them where they can formulate individual identities for themselves as well as communal identities, and where they can work on goal setting. Who are you now and who do you want to be in the next few years? And so they can decide that for themselves and also move on from past identities that may have been forced on them by the regime and take action and set what they want themselves to be and take the power into their own hands.
And the last point is for creation, creating art, films, other media to cement our story, to document our story, and to tell it to other people internally and externally. So some of that could be physical art, monuments, murals, actually investing in art for our community. And the other one would be for digital media. So that would be films, TVs, spots, spotlights on communities and things along those lines that would help us bridge together as a community, understand what everybody has gone through, essentially, and build a collective story as Syrians.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Lana, Sana, Kima, Yasser, and Ramel. All right, so, well, thank you so much for listening. What's gonna happen next is we're gonna basically collect all these, insights, 90 days by the end of 2025, put them all in one slide deck, crispify them, and then after that share them back with you, and then you guys can translate that into initiatives or share it with other communities. And as SYNC, we will have work groups and time to figure out what we're going to do next. There is research, Ibn House research to say 80% of what you read and listen, you're gonna forget by the next 24 hours. So we're gonna forget a lot of things today, right? So by tomorrow, you're probably gonna remember 20%. And 80% of what you remember, you're not going to take any actions on. So only 20% of what you remember, which is 20% of what you listen and read, you're going to basically take actions on. So it's all about actions. So the best way to do this is to keep the momentum going and make it a movement by just stay connected. So what we're going to do basically after the conference, we're going to send out emails, which is surveys and thank you, and also questions if you would like to be part of a network, and opt in so you can stay connected and have this momentum going.